My beloved brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when you wake up feeling heavy, even though nothing obvious has gone wrong. Your body is tired. Your heart feels burdened. Your mind feels crowded. And you ask yourself quietly, why does everything feel so difficult right now? Let me tell you something very important. This weight you feel is not random. Allah does nothing without purpose. Not in the heavens, not on the earth, and not in your life. When Allah prepares to change your direction, He does not always announce it with comfort. Sometimes He announces it with pressure, with endings, with emotional heaviness that forces you to stop, reflect, and detach. And often, before Allah gives you a new life, He ends one version of you completely. Let us understand this properly. When Allah moves someone, it is never accidental. Nothing in your life shifts by coincidence. Not timing, not people, not circumstances, not even the heaviness you feel when things stop making sense. If your life suddenly feels unstable, it is not because Allah has abandoned you. That assumption is the mind panicking, not faith speaking. It is often because Allah is repositioning you. And repositioning is never gentle on the ego or comfortable for the soul. The Quran reminds us that Allah is Al-Hakim, the most wise. Wisdom does not rush. Wisdom does not panic. Wisdom does not react emotionally. Wisdom moves with precision, even when the movement feels slow, heavy, or painful to the one being moved. Human beings want explanations before transitions. Allah often gives transitions before explanations. Think about how limited our vision is. You see today, Allah sees your entire life. You see what you are losing now. Allah sees what staying would cost you later. You judge events by how they feel. Allah judges them by where they lead. That is why things sometimes fall apart without warning. Not because Allah enjoys your discomfort, but because the structure you were standing on could not support the future He intends for you. Sometimes Allah allows your comfort to be disturbed because comfort was keeping you stagnant. This is a hard truth, but it needs to be said clearly. Comfort can be a cage when it disconnects you from growth. You were surviving, but you were not growing. You were functioning, but you were not transforming. Many people confuse stability with progress. They think because nothing is wrong, everything must be right. But spiritually, emotionally, even morally, nothing was moving. You were repeating days, not evolving. You were managing life, not aligning with purpose. And Allah does not create human beings for stagnation, so He shakes what you rely on, not to harm you, not to punish you, but to loosen your grip on what was never meant to carry you forward. Sometimes He shakes relationships because you were leaning on people more than you were leaning on Him. Sometimes He shakes routines because routine had replaced intention. Sometimes He shakes plans because your plans were too small for what He had written. This shaking feels cruel when you don't understand it. But once you look back, you realize it was surgical. Allah does not tear things randomly. He removes with precision. When a builder wants to rebuild a structure, the first thing that must happen is instability. Walls come down, support beams are removed, dust fills the air. From the outside, it looks like destruction. But from the inside, it is preparation. Your life is no different. Allah may remove what you thought was essential because it was blocking what was necessary. He may disrupt what you were attached to because that attachment was quietly controlling you. He may end a chapter abruptly because prolonging it would delay your growth. And this is where many people make a mistake. They assume that if something was comfortable, it must have been good. Comfort is not a measure of correctness. Ease is not a guarantee of alignment. Sometimes Allah allows ease as a test. Sometimes He removes it as mercy. If Allah truly wanted to abandon you, He would let you remain asleep. He would let you stay comfortable while drifting further away from clarity, discipline, and truth. He would let you rot slowly without resistance. But Allah does not do that to those He cares about. Instead, He interrupts. He interrupts your sense of control. He interrupts your expectations. He interrupts the version of life you thought was fine. And interruption feels like loss before it feels like guidance. You may find yourself questioning decisions you once felt sure about. You may feel emotionally heavy without a clear reason. You may notice that things that once satisfied you now feel empty. This is not confusion. This is recalibration. Allah is adjusting your internal compass. You see, movement requires friction. Growth requires resistance. Transformation requires discomfort. If Allah moved you gently every time, you would never realize you were being moved at all. But when the shift is heavy, it forces awareness. It forces you to stop and ask, why am I here? What am I holding on to? What is no longer serving my faith, my character, my future? And those questions are not meant to break you. They are meant to wake you up. Allah does not move you without reason. He moves you because remaining where you were would eventually damage you. He moves you because you asked Him for more, even if you forgot the prayer. He moves you because the next stage of your life requires a different foundation. So when things feel unstable, resist the urge to label it as failure. Resist the temptation to assume rejection. Instability does not mean Allah has left you. Often, it means He is closer than you realize, rearranging things you cannot yet see. What feels like disruption now will later reveal itself as direction. And when the dust settles, you will understand why staying comfortable would have cost you everything that was meant for you. True heaviness is a sign you are between two lives. When Allah prepares a person for a new life, there is almost always a period where they feel like they belong nowhere. The old life no longer fits, but the new life has not fully formed. And that in-between space feels heavy. This is where many people panic. They assume something has gone wrong. They think they made a mistake. They think they are failing spiritually or emotionally. But in reality, they are standing in a transition Allah Himself designed. Heaviness is not always a burden. Sometimes it is a signal. Think carefully about this. When you lift something light, your body barely notices it. When you lift something heavy, your entire posture changes. Your muscles engage, your breath adjusts, your focus sharpens. Heaviness forces awareness. Allah allows heaviness when He wants your full attention. When life becomes emotionally heavy, it is often because you are carrying two identities at the same time. The person you were and the person you are becoming. That overlap creates tension. Old habits resist leaving. Old attachments demand relevance. Old versions of you refuse to step aside quietly. And all of that pressure gathers inside the heart. You feel tired even when you rest. You feel distracted even when things are calm. You feel unsettled even when nothing dramatic is happening. This is not weakness. This is friction between who you were and who you are meant to be. Allah does not instantly replace one life with another. He transitions you, and transition is uncomfortable by design. If it were comfortable, you would try to carry everything forward. You would drag old behaviors, old mindsets, old dependencies into a space where they do not belong. So Allah makes the overlap heavy. The heaviness forces you to drop things, drop expectations that no longer fit, drop relationships that no longer align, drop routines that no longer nourish your faith. You may notice that what once excited you now feels empty. Conversations feel repetitive. Goals feel shallow. Even achievements feel strangely hollow. This is not ingratitude. This is your soul rejecting what it has outgrown. Allah is slowly disconnecting your heart from an old environment, and disconnection hurts when attachment was strong. Many people misunderstand this stage and try to escape it. They distract themselves, they numb themselves, they chase noise, validation, or constant stimulation to avoid sitting with the heaviness. But avoidance only prolongs the transition. Heaviness demands stillness. It demands reflection. It demands honesty. This is the moment where Allah is teaching you to stop identifying with what you are losing and start preparing for what you are becoming. But here is the difficult part. Allah rarely shows you the full picture while you are in the middle of the transition. If He did, you would rush, you would become impatient. You would try to force outcomes before your character is ready to carry them. So instead, He gives you weight, not vision. The weight slows you down. The weight humbles you. The weight strips arrogance, urgency, and entitlement. And slowly, quietly, something shifts inside you. You become less reactive, less dependent, less desperate for certainty. You begin to rely more on Allah, not because you want to, but because everything else feels unreliable. And that reliance is exactly the point. Allah wants your trust before He gives you clarity. He wants your surrender before He gives you stability. He wants you to let go of who you think you are before He shows you who you can become. This is why the heaviest seasons often precede the most meaningful transformations. Not because Allah enjoys testing you, but because transformation without pressure produces fragile results. A heart that has never been strained cannot carry responsibility. A soul that has never been unsettled cannot recognize peace. The heaviness you feel is shaping your inner strength. It is teaching you patience without guarantees, faith without immediate relief, trust without visible reassurance. And when the stage passes, you will realize something important. The heaviness did not come to crush you. It came to compress you. Pressure creates density. Density creates strength. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. So if you feel like you are between two lives right now, do not rush the process. Do not label yourself as lost. You are not lost. You are being repositioned. The old life is loosening its grip. The new life is forming its foundation. And the heaviness is simply the space where Allah is reshaping you quietly, intentionally, and with wisdom far beyond what you can see. When the weight finally lifts, you will not be the same person who entered it. And that is exactly why it had to feel heavy. 3. Allah removes before He replaces. One of the most difficult truths to accept is this: Allah often removes things from your life before He brings what is meant to replace them. And the space in between removal and replacement is where most people lose patience. Human beings want guarantees. We want to know what is coming next before we are willing to let go of what we have now. But Allah does not work that way. He asks for trust first, then reveals the outcome later. When Allah removes something from your life, it rarely feels neutral. It feels like loss. It feels like rejection. It feels like something valuable has been taken away. But removal is not always deprivation. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is redirection. Sometimes it is mercy disguised as pain. Allah removes what you are too attached to. Not because attachment itself is sinful, but because attachment can quietly replace reliance on Him. When your heart leans too heavily on a person, a role, a plan, or an identity, Allah intervenes. He does not do this suddenly out of cruelty. He does it because the weight of that attachment would break you later. Think about how many things you begged Allah for in the past that, if you had received them, would have harmed your faith, your peace, or your future. At the time, you could not see it. You thought the delay was denial. You thought the loss was injustice. Only later did clarity arrive. This is why Allah often removes before He replaces. Replacement without detachment does not last. If Allah gave you something new while you were still clinging to the old, you would sabotage it. You would compare. You would project. You would carry unresolved expectations into a space that needs clarity and presence. So Allah creates emptiness. And emptiness is uncomfortable. The empty space feels like loneliness. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing still while everyone else moves forward. But emptiness is not wasted space. It is cleared ground. A field must be cleared before it can be planted. If the soil is crowded with weeds, nothing new can take root. Allah removes the weeds of your life, not because He wants you to stare at empty land forever, but because He is preparing it for something that needs room to grow. Many people make the mistake of trying to fill the emptiness too quickly. They rush into replacements, new distractions, new attachments, new noise, anything to avoid sitting with the discomfort of loss. But rushing only recreates the same patterns Allah was trying to break. Allah is not asking you to replace what you lost. He is asking you to release it. Release the version of yourself that needed it to feel complete. Release the belief that your worth depended on it. Release the illusion that it was permanent. This is where patience becomes worship. Not the patience of waiting with a countdown, but the patience of trusting without timelines. The patience of saying, "Oh Allah, I do not understand this, but I trust you." And trust is not passive. Trust changes behavior. It softens the heart. It quiets desperation. It reduces the urge to force outcomes. As long as your heart is clenched around what was removed, it is not open enough to receive what is coming. This is why Allah delays replacement. He is not withholding. He is waiting for readiness. Readiness is not about circumstances. It is about inner alignment. When your heart is no longer begging for what left, when you stop replaying what could have been, when you stop measuring your future by your past, that is when replacement arrives. And often when it does, you realize something surprising. The replacement does not simply fill the gap, it changes you. It brings lessons the old thing never could. It requires strength you did not have before. It fits a version of you that only exists because of what was removed. Allah does not remove without intention. He does not empty without purpose. He does not take without planning what will eventually give you more clarity, more stability, and more nearness to Him. The pain of removal is temporary. The wisdom it creates is permanent. So if something has been taken from your life and nothing has replaced it yet, do not rush to fill the space. Do not assume the story is over. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. Allah is clearing your hands so you can carry something better. And when the replacement finally comes, you will understand why it could not arrive any earlier. For what Allah is ending cannot follow you forward. One of the most painful realizations in life is discovering that not everything you love can go with you into your next chapter. And one of the greatest mercies of Allah is that He does not allow you to carry what would eventually destroy you. Every stage of life requires a different version of you. What sustained you before may limit you now. What protected you once may now hold you back. What felt necessary in an earlier season may become harmful in the next. Allah knows this, even when you do not. So when Allah begins to end things in your life, it is not because those things were meaningless, it is because their role has finished, their purpose has been fulfilled. Endings feel cruel because we confuse usefulness with permanence. We assume that if something once helped us, it must always stay. But Allah does not measure by sentiment, He measures by suitability. There are people who were meant to walk with you for a season, not a lifetime. There are habits that once helped you survive, but can no longer help you grow. There are mindsets that once protected you, but now limit your capacity for trust, patience, and faith. Allah removes these things not suddenly, but decisively. And when He does, the pain comes from resistance. You resist because the ending threatens familiarity. You resist because the ending feels like erasing part of your identity. You resist because letting go forces you to redefine yourself. But understand this clearly. What Allah is ending cannot follow you forward. If it could, He would allow it to remain. If it were safe for your future, He would preserve it. If it were compatible with the next version of you, He would strengthen it. Allah is not careless with endings. When something ends despite your effort, your dua, and your patience, it is often because Allah has decided it no longer fits the path ahead, and no amount of attachment can override divine wisdom. This is where faith is tested, not in receiving blessings, but in accepting closures, not in gaining, but in releasing. Many people spend years grieving what Allah has already closed. They replay conversations, they revisit memories, they ask endless what-if questions. And all of that keeps them emotionally stuck in a place Allah has already moved them out of. Closure does not require answers, it requires acceptance. Allah does not owe you explanations before He protects you. He does not require your approval before He intervenes. Sometimes He ends things quietly, sometimes abruptly, but always with intention. And here is something important to understand. Endings are not failures, they are transitions. They mark growth, not loss. A child does not fail when they outgrow their clothes. They simply grow. Forcing yourself to stay in what no longer fits only causes discomfort and restriction. Allah ends what no longer fits your spiritual size. What you are becoming requires lighter baggage, clearer intention, and stronger reliance on Him. Carrying old wounds, old dependencies, and old identities would slow you down and distort your judgment. So Allah lightens your load, even when you protest, even when you cry, even when you do not understand. And later when you look back, you will see how precise those endings were. You will see how much damage was avoided. You will see how much clarity was gained. You will realize that what felt like loss was actually alignment. Allah does not end things to leave you empty. He ends them to make space for something that can truly move forward with you. So do not chase what Allah has ended. Do not reopen doors He has closed. Do not beg for the return of what He has removed. Trust that if Allah ended it, it was never meant to follow you into the life He is preparing. And trust that what lies ahead requires a version of you that only exists because of what Allah chose to end. 5. Allah uses pressure to purify your intentions. One of the greatest misconceptions people have is that pressure means Allah is displeased. In reality, pressure is often how Allah purifies what is inside you. It reveals why you were doing what you were doing and who you were really doing it for. When life is easy, intentions can hide. You can mix sincerity with ego and not notice. You can chase approval and call it service. You can pursue validation and label it success. Comfort allows confusion to survive. Pressure removes confusion. When Allah applies pressure, your intentions are exposed. You begin to see what you truly wanted, not what you claimed to want. You discover whether your actions were rooted in faith or in fear, whether your patience was genuine or conditional. Pressure asks uncomfortable questions. Would you still obey Allah if no one noticed? Would you still remain upright if the reward was delayed? Would you still choose what is right if it cost you what felt familiar? These questions are not asked verbally, they are asked through circumstances. When Allah tightens your situation, He is not shrinking your life, He is refining your heart. He is separating what was done for Him from what was done for image, habit, or expectation. This is why pressure feels so intense. It is not attacking your outer life, it is working on your inner alignment. Under pressure, false motivations collapse. You no longer have the energy to perform for people. You stop chasing applause because survival demands sincerity. What remains is what is real. This is mercy, even though it feels severe. Allah does not want you to reach the next stage of your life carrying polluted intentions. Blessings built on mixed motives do not last. Success without sincerity becomes a burden. Growth without clarity becomes arrogance. So Allah purifies first. You may notice that under pressure, your desires change. Things you once wanted lose their appeal. Goals you once chased feel hollow. You begin to crave peace more than recognition, alignment more than approval, truth more than comfort. That shift is not accidental. Allah is teaching you to want the right things, not just good things. Pressure also teaches humility. It reminds you that you are not self-sufficient, that no amount of planning, intelligence, or effort can replace Allah's permission. This awareness is not meant to humiliate you. It is meant to ground you. A heart that knows its dependence on Allah is safer than a heart intoxicated by control. Under pressure, dua becomes honest, not polished, not rehearsed, honest. You stop negotiating, you stop pretending, you speak to Allah as you are, not as you wish to appear. And Allah loves that state. This is why some of the most sincere believers are shaped in difficult seasons, because pressure strips away everything unnecessary and leaves only truth. Pressure also forces you to confront your limits. It shows you where you relied too much on yourself and too little on Allah. It exposes the illusion of control you didn't realize you were living under. And once that illusion breaks, something powerful replaces it. Tawakkul. Not passive waiting, but active trust. The kind of trust that allows you to move forward without panic. The kind that accepts uncertainty without despair. Allah does not purify your intentions to delay your life. He purifies them to protect your future. What comes next requires sincerity, humility, and clarity. Without pressure, those qualities would remain underdeveloped. So when life feels tight, do not immediately ask for relief. First, ask for understanding. Ask Allah to show you what He is refining. Ask Him to correct what needs correction before expansion arrives. Because when Allah finally lifts the pressure, you will not just have more space, you will have a cleaner heart to occupy it. And that is a blessing far greater than ease without clarity. 6. Allah pulls you inward before He lifts you upward. One of the most confusing phases in a person's life is when they feel an urge to withdraw. You become quieter, more selective, less interested in explaining yourself or proving your worth. And you may wonder, what is happening to me? This inward pull is not decline, it is preparation. Before Allah elevates a person, He often reduces their noise. He narrows their circle. He limits distractions, not as punishment, but as protection. Elevation without grounding leads to arrogance. Visibility without depth leads to collapse. So Allah pulls you inward first. This inward phase can feel lonely. Conversations that once energized you now drain you. Social interactions feel forced. Even achievements feel strangely empty. You are not depressed, you are detaching. Allah is teaching you to sit with yourself without external stimulation, to hear your own thoughts, to recognize what truly matters when the noise fades. This phase is uncomfortable because it removes familiar sources of validation. When people stop clapping, when feedback disappears, when attention fades, the heart is exposed, and whatever remains is what you were truly relying on. Allah wants to know where your stability comes from. Many people rely on being needed, being admired, being constantly engaged, but reliance on people is fragile. Allah knows this. So He interrupts it gently, sometimes painfully, so you can rediscover reliance on Him. Inwardness also strengthens discernment. When your world becomes quieter, you start noticing patterns you ignored before. You recognize which relationships were transactional, which commitments were draining your iman, which habits were numbing your awareness. Noise hides truth. Silence reveals it. Allah pulls you away from constant engagement so you can see clearly. He creates distance so you can observe without emotion clouding judgment. What once felt normal now appears heavy. What once felt acceptable now feels misaligned. This clarity is essential before elevation, because what Allah plans to give you next will test your discernment. Without this inward work, you would repeat old mistakes in a new environment. The inward phase also teaches restraint. You learn not to react immediately, not to speak unnecessarily, not to chase every urge. Restraint builds strength. It trains the soul to respond with intention rather than impulse. Allah loves restraint. Not because silence is superior to speech, but because controlled speech reflects controlled desire. And controlled desire is the foundation of spiritual maturity. During this phase, you may feel misunderstood. People may assume you have changed for the worse. They may label your withdrawal as coldness or distance. Do not rush to correct them. Not everyone needs access to your process. Allah did not pull you inward for explanation. He pulled you inward for transformation. Elevation requires inner stability. When Allah lifts someone outward, increases responsibility, influence, or clarity, that person must already be anchored. Otherwise, the lift becomes a test they cannot carry. So Allah anchors you first. He strengthens your relationship with solitude. He teaches you to be content without constant reassurance. He shows you that your worth does not fluctuate with attention. This inward grounding is quiet, subtle, often invisible to others, but it is powerful. And when the time is right, Allah lifts you outward again with more wisdom, more restraint, more clarity. When that happens, you will not crave attention the way you once did. You will not depend on approval to feel steady. You will move with purpose, not urgency. So if you feel drawn inward right now, do not resist it. Do not label it as regression. Allah is not shrinking your life. He is strengthening your core. And when the outward expansion comes, you will be able to carry it without losing yourself. That is the wisdom of the inward pull. Allah prepares the foundation before He builds the structure. Always. The 7, what Allah is preparing requires a stronger you. Every blessing Allah prepares carries weight, responsibility, tests, consequences, and not every version of you is capable of carrying what is coming next. This is why Allah does not rush the process. People often ask Allah for change, elevation, clarity, and relief, but they underestimate what those things demand internally. A stronger life requires a stronger heart. A clearer path requires a steadier mind. A higher station requires deeper humility. Allah knows exactly how much you can carry. So before He delivers what you are asking for, He strengthens you in ways that feel uncomfortable. He exposes your weaknesses. He confronts your fears. He places you in situations where your old coping mechanisms no longer work. Not to break you, but to upgrade you. What is coming cannot be carried by the version of you that panics easily. It cannot be carried by the version of you that needs constant reassurance. It cannot be carried by the version of you that avoids discomfort or escapes responsibility. So Allah trains you. He trains your patience by delaying answers. He trains your trust by removing certainties. He trains your resilience by allowing pressure to stay longer than you would choose. This training feels heavy because growth is demanding. Muscles only strengthen under resistance. The soul is no different. Allah does not strengthen you by giving you ease. He strengthens you by giving you capacity. Capacity is built under strain. You may notice that you are becoming more emotionally controlled, less reactive, more thoughtful. This is not numbness. This is maturity forming. You are learning to respond instead of react. You may also notice that your standards are changing. You tolerate less nonsense. You value peace more. You walk away sooner. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. Allah is sharpening your discernment. What lies ahead will require you to choose wisely, to say no without guilt, to stand firm without aggression, to lead without ego. These skills are not developed in comfort. They are formed in quiet battles no one sees. The heaviness you feel now is strengthening your inner structure. It is compressing your focus. It is teaching you discipline when motivation fades, faith when certainty disappears. Allah is also preparing you for loneliness, not permanent isolation, but emotional independence. What comes next may place you in spaces where few people understand you, where praise is scarce, where responsibility is heavy. Without inner strength, that loneliness would crush you. So Allah teaches you how to stand alone without falling apart. He teaches you how to be steady without applause, how to move forward without external validation, how to trust Him even when outcomes are unclear. The strength is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition, but it endures. When Allah finally opens the door to what He has been preparing, you will step into it differently than you imagine now. With less urgency, less desperation, less fear. You will realize that the preparation mattered more than the destination. And you will understand why Allah did not give it to you earlier. Because earlier it would have overwhelmed you. It would have inflated you. It would have distracted you from Him. Now you are steadier. The heaviness you endured was not delay, it was conditioning. And because of that conditioning, when the next chapter begins, you will not lose yourself in it. You will carry it with humility, strength, and trust. That is why it had to feel heavy. Allah was not slowing you down. He was making you strong enough to move forward without breaking. My beloved brothers and sisters, if life feels heavy right now, do not rush to label it as misfortune. Do not assume that Allah has turned away from you. Often the opposite is true. Allah is closer to you in these moments than you realize. What feels like pressure is preparation. What feels like loss is alignment. What feels like delay is protection. Allah does not burden a soul without purpose, and He does not change a person's life without first changing what is inside them. The heaviness you feel is not meant to crush you. It is meant to shape you into someone who can carry what is coming next. Trust the process even when you do not understand it. Hold on to Allah even when everything else feels uncertain. Do not cling to what He is removing, and do not fear what you cannot yet see. The chapter that is ending served its purpose. The chapter that is coming requires strength, patience, and clarity, and Allah is preparing you for it with wisdom far beyond your sight. Remain firm, remain sincere, remain connected to Allah, because when the weight finally lifts, you will realize that every moment of heaviness was guiding you exactly where you needed to be, and Allah knows best.